they're like, "Mama, what's wrong? Are you okay?" And I said, there's a really nice couple up front and a lady that wants to buy our shoes. I said, Jesus wants to buy us shoes today.
Yeah.
And they were like, really? I'm like, you said you needed shoes. We weren't even planning on coming in here. It was so wild to me. And they told us, they said,
Mm.
pick out whatever shoes you want.
Hey, Taryn.
Hey,
Guess what we're talking about today?
what are we talking about?
We're talking about how people can experience miracles in their life on a daily basis.
I love it.
And how we've kind of encountered that a little bit in our life. And
Yeah.
you have too.
Yeah.
But I know the people have always asked me, they're like, how does all this always happen to you? And I think there's a expectation. But I also think there's a beauty in seeing the perspective
Yeah.
of a blessing. And so I want to talk about that a little bit today.
Yeah, that sounds great. Well, the first thing that comes to mind too is, we think about blessings. We always, my love language is gifts. I love to give gifts, but it's always better to give than to receive. That's kind of what comes to mind. But when you're the receiver, it's like, oh wow, like why? But it's little miracles like this that the Lord does.
Yeah, and I think also when we experience these small type of miracles, the good part about it is it's like, Lord, that wasn't even important, but
Yeah.
but to you it was because it was a desire of my heart. And I think that's where you kind of get really emotional and you're like,
Yeah.
how we were trying to figure out how we were going to do this, and the Lord just
Yeah.
kind of swoops in and
Yeah.
handles it so easily, and you're
Yeah.
just like something so simple. So talk to me about what happened, because you were with the girls one time
Yeah.
and you needed to get kids shoes or something. Is that right?
Yeah. We didn't need to get shoes. I wasn't even planning to get shoes. We ran into the shoe store that was next to the grocery store, and my oldest daughter said, "Mama, I'd really love to get some new shoes. I think I need some new tennis shoes." And I just thought, okay, this wasn't something we planned for, and
Yeah.
I just didn't want to spend extra money on shoes. And I mean, that may seem like such a small thing, but in that particular day, it just was not something I was planning for. And so she's like, "I really want to go in the shoe store." And I thought, okay, we had the time. And I said, well, let's just go in. Maybe they have just a shoe deal or something going on. What's it going to hurt to go look, right? So we go inside the shoe store and we head back to, it's like a kid section, all the fun shoes are out, all the sparkly ones, all the colorful ones. And so the store, normally I don't do this, but the store had like nobody in it. And so I left the girls there like back where I could see them. And I said, I'm going to go up front and just ask if they have any, sales or anything like that going on. I'm a bargain shopper.
Yes, you are.
When I need, and with kids stuff, I try to. And so I go back up to the front and I asked the lady that's working there, I said, hey, is there, I would get ready to look around at the store. I said, is there any deals or anything like that I need to know before I shop? And she goes, no, sorry, there's not today. And I said, that's okay. I just wanted to ask. And in that moment, there was a woman that was standing there, and she and her husband were standing there checking out. And she, I guess, overheard the conversation. And she said, do you have kids? And I said, yes. I said, I've got my kids in the back. And she goes, go pick out shoes. She goes, the Lord told me to buy your shoes today. And I was like, what? And I said, no, it's okay. She goes, go pick out shoes for you and your kids. She said, how many kids do you have with you? And I said, 2 daughters. I said, they're standing over there. I said, you really don't have to do that. Like, it was just like, oh my gosh, And she said, the Lord told me to buy your shoes. Go pick out 2 pairs of shoes for each of your daughters and 2 pairs of shoes for you. And I was just like, I'm bawling. I'm like, what is going on? And so I'm like, are you sure? Like, we just went back and forth for a couple minutes. I go back to my girls, which I wasn't gone, that long, but they're like, Mama, what's wrong? Are you okay? And I said, there's a really nice couple up front and a lady that wants to buy our shoes. I said, Jesus wants to buy us shoes today.
Yeah.
And they were like, really? I'm like, you said you needed shoes. We weren't even planning on coming in here. It was so wild to me. And they they told us, they said,
Mm.
pick out whatever shoes you want. They came back and said, don't worry about how much it costs. I'm like, this is a prank, right? Like
Yeah.
somebody's like, this
Yeah,
is not
yeah.
real life, you know? I'm here in Chattanooga, Tennessee. This is not like, this things, I don't know. It was just, I was totally caught off guard. And so she's like, don't worry about let the girls get whatever kind of shoes they want. And so I'm like, okay, girls, maybe I'm getting duped up here when I get up to the front with all my shoes.
Shoes, yeah.
And so, anyways, long story short, we walked out of there with 2 pairs of shoes each. And the husband came over to me. He's like, what about your shoes? I'm like, no, it's okay. Just get the kids. He's like, go get your shoes. Like, we're serious. The Lord wants to bless you and your family today. And so actually, right here, I didn't plan this today, but yeah, these are the shoes.
Yeah, I remember when you got them. You called
Yeah.
me right when you left.
I'm like, these are kind of fun. I probably wouldn't have, and I don't know if you can see them on camera, but let me see if I can do this. They're fun. And I don't know that I would have
Yeah.
picked them out on just a normal day. I'd probably would have picked like an athletic shoe because
Sure.
I need it for the gym, something I need, but I bought something that I thought was fun.
Yeah.
And it was just such a blessing from the Lord and so out of the blue. And what's so crazy, which I didn't realize that at that time, but later on in the day, I was talking to a friend about it, and she goes, I told her, I said, do you realize how much money this couple like spent on 6 pairs of like brand new different types of shoes? And I told her it was $365 because the guy gave me the receipt. He's like,
Yeah.
just in case you need to bring
Yeah.
anything back. And she goes, Taryn, like it's $365. Do you not realize like that's the Lord telling you like he's going to take care of you every single day of the year? And I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It was one of the coolest like life marking moments. And all it took was their family being obedient to just sow a seed.
Yeah.
It
And
was amazing.
I think while you were talking, one of the things that came to my mind was I think when people think about sowing a seed, right? Like
Mhm.
that happened to you, we think in our mind that you didn't have money and the kids didn't have shoes and you needed to be in need for that.
Mhm.
You didn't need to be in need
Mhm.
for that. And God comes through in those moments too.
Yeah.
It's just a desire of your heart.
Yeah.
And he honored that. It
Yeah.
was a desire of your girl's heart.
It was.
Yeah.
And Eleanor said, Mama, I'd really like to buy some shoes. And I'm like, oh, maybe we can take a look. But it was not the plan to buy shoes that day.
Yeah. And so I think when we think about sowing seeds, we think about people in need
Mm-hmm.
or like we need to be in need for
Yeah.
that to happen.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes it's the expectation of, Lord, I think, I feel like, like I want someone to sow into me,
Mhm.
and we never think that way
We
because
don't, yeah.
we're always trained to sow into other people and sow into people that have needs. And so
Yeah.
I think we miss the point of like, we're here to experience the goodness of God in the land of the living.
Yes.
There is goodness here
Yeah.
that we can experience.
Mhm.
And so I think and that goes back to our story with Ken that we met
Yeah. Just recently.
at Panera that happened, like, I think 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
We were having a all hands on deck meeting for the podcast
Yeah.
and just content creation, some ideas that were running through our mind. When this gentleman was, bless his heart, was a veteran,
Mm-hmm.
and on the phone, his power was about to get turned off.
Mm-hmm.
And I was sensing the distress in his voice.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had a really cool experience,
Yeah.
the three of us. And I remember, and then I threw Taryn out there to go talk to the guy because I was like, I'll pay his electricity bill, find out how much it is.
Yeah.
But then, I had these questions in my mind. Well, how much is the electricity bill?
Mhm.
Like, I know like older people blast the heat. It's been in the teens. Like, are we going to get like a $500?
Yeah. You're like, can we
Can I
afford
afford it? Like, can I afford to do this? Like, I want to sow a seed, but can I afford to even pay? I hate to ask him and be like,
Yeah.
hey, buddy, I got like
Yeah.
$50. Like,
Yeah.
and there was those thoughts running through my mind.
Sure.
But the Lord always uses what you have. And then I know you went over there and prayed for him.
Yeah. I went over to him and I was like, hey, I'm so sorry. I couldn't help but overhear your conversation because, well, he was kind of loud on the phone and I felt bad because at first I was annoyed. I'm like, why is this dude so loud on the phone? But he had every right and
Yeah.
reason to be upset on the phone because his electricity was going to be shut off
Mm.
today or that day, excuse me, at like 2 o'clock. And so,
And I remember it was supposed to be freezing that night.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so when I said I couldn't help but overhear the conversation, he was so apologetic. He's like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I'm so embarrassed." And I'm like, "No, no, it's okay." And so I said, "My friends and I overheard what was going on. Would like to help you." Says it your electricity, and he's like, "Yeah." And I said, "Please let us help you." And he's like, "No, it's okay." And I said, "You don't understand." And I said, "We want to."
Yeah.
And so I think for him, it was a moment of need, but there was a level of shame and
Yeah.
embarrassment that he felt. And so I was trying to just make him feel comfortable like, no, it's okay. Like there are times when we all have needs. And the Lord really came through for him that day.
Mhm.
And so it was such a cool thing because I prayed for him and I just said, like, we'd love to help you and prayed for him. And then he began telling me his story.
Mhm.
And he said, I used to be a pastor. And I was like, whoa, here's this man like in such need. But he said, I used to be a pastor. And he said, my wife got sick over 20 something years ago. And he said, she's now passed away. He said, I'm not in ministry anymore, but I still love the Lord.
Mhm.
And I said, I know you do.
Mhm.
And I said, and he loves you too.
Mhm.
And it was such a heartwarming experience that I will never forget.
Mhm.
And what I'll never forget too is after all this took place, then he turns around and starts praying for the three of us
Yeah, he did.
and just like saying scripture over us. The man knew the word. And I thought, wow, Lord, I was in a place where I just was almost too annoyed at the situation and almost didn't see his need.
Mhm.
And I remember I excused myself from the table after everything had happened and I went to the restroom and I said, Lord, will you help me never to overlook someone else's need? May my need never be greater than someone
Yeah.
else's need because the Lord loves Ken just as much as he does me. But he
Absolutely.
used us in that moment and that day to sow a seed, but it was true need.
Yeah.
And we all did. We all sowed into him. I think
Yeah.
it was so amazing.
It was amazing. And bless his heart, just for his accountability. He kept showing us the phone and
He
he wanted
did.
us to know that the money was being used for what he said it was going to be
Yeah.
used for. And I just thought, wow, Lord, like, so this appointment wasn't about us getting together. It was about meeting Ken's need. Like that whole day was organized by the Lord. Because I don't know if you remember, that was like a 7:45, 8 o'clock in the morning phone call. And you were like, let's do a fast meeting. And I'm like, I don't think you're going to get everybody. And if, let's meet it. I'm like, man, that's like in 20 minutes. And you're like, well, I'm already ready. And I'm like, I'm rolling out of bed. Like, and we did, we made
Yeah.
it. And so I just feel like, and I feel like the Lord put three people together to meet Ken's need.
Yeah. He did. He
And
absolutely
so I
did.
think the thing is he pursues that one. He
Mm-hmm.
really does.
Mm.
And if you're vulnerable and open enough, and there's so many people in Panera that day, I know everybody heard him,
Oh, sure.
but it's not even like they're ignoring him. It's they're consumed in their own life and their
Yeah.
own stories and their own things that they're doing. And so I remember thinking, I was like, Lord, I never like want to walk around this earth
Uh-huh.
unaware of what's happening around me and to the people
I
around
know.
me and the brokenness of
I
what's
know.
happening. And so, and I can't do everything, but I can do something
Sure.
to my
Yeah.
capacity. I don't ever feel like the Lord would put me somewhere where I couldn't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
I think he only puts me where I can do something.
Yeah.
And so I think you just have to be open to that place of being like, yeah, Lord, I want to bless somebody. And it's just harder I think, to receive the seed too.
Sure.
I think one time we went somewhere and somebody paid for a dinner or something, and we were so thrown off that we're like, no, that's what we do. Like, like we were so thrown off. Like my husband was like, it's weird. Like this is weird. I was like, yeah, this is weird.
Mm.
And he's like, wait, do other people think it's weird when we pay for theirs? Because that's our thing. That's what
Yeah.
we do. We pay for dinner. And I was like, I don't know, but this is weird. And
Mm.
because in my mind, I thought, did they think we were in need?
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And there was some type of shame connected with that. And it was
Yeah.
like, no, they don't think we're in need. They just wanted to bless us.
Yeah.
And I think we have to get in a better place of, not only giving, but in the receiving of that,
Yeah.
because their blessing is connected to them sowing into you.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
they're being obedient. If you reject that,
Mm-hmm.
they get denied a blessing.
Yeah.
And so that's how we would manipulate the checks. we were like, don't deny us our blessing, steal the check from our
Yeah.
people we go with. We fight
Yeah.
for the check all the time. That's what we do. And I just tell people, like, just learn to receive. And I would tell people that so boldly. But then when it happened to me, I was just like, this is weird.
This-
This is weird. This is really
Yeah.
strange. But it's such a beautiful thing. And there's something you learn in the sowing and the receiving.
Yeah. Yeah. With Ken that day in Panera, I mean, I know that it blessed him, but I think it blessed us like maybe even more. I don't know. I just feel that way anyways, because for us, the seed that we sowed in him seems so small compared to like how the Lord spoke to us
Yeah.
over the situation.
Yeah.
And so I just think it's so cool when you're obedient, if you're the one that's sowing a seed, how the Lord just uses that to bless you. And if you're the receiving end, like the shoe story, I will never forget that story, like ever. And the thing is, neither will my kids.
Yeah.
And it's so awesome that they can be like, yeah, Jesus bought our shoes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think also too, people need to really understand and realize that it's not about like who needs it.
Yeah.
Like we have a friend of ours, and my husband's like, every time we go out to eat them, let's pay, because they're well off and they always end up paying all the time. And it's like, they must never be blessed by other people because people don't think they need to be blessed. Does that make sense? Because they're wealthy and they're fine. But I was like, but that's not the purpose of that.
Yeah.
The purpose of that is, no, we honor you and we respect you.
Yeah.
And we want to bless you in this place, whatever that looks like. And so I just had a friend of mine. So when I always encourage people, when tragic things happen in your life, when you're downtrodden and things are happening, ask the Lord, how can you turn this for good? I had a friend of mine, their mother passed away. She was well into her 90s, I think. And didn't know, but there was like life insurance and other things. The kids, I don't think they knew.
Yeah.
And they had just lost some of their benefits from a disability situation and didn't know what they were going to do. And she said to me, she goes, we didn't know that money was there, but it came and we were able to pay off our home. And they just bought it less than 6-7 years ago.
Yeah.
But the thing is, now she had the comfort of knowing something happens to my husband, I won't be kicked out of my house. You know what I mean? And so it's like, in the tragedy of a thing, you look and be like, Lord, how will you turn this for good? And not even materialistically, but in my heart, in my mind, in my spirit.
Yeah.
How can we turn this for good? And I think that's a posture of expecting favor. And I think I told you the story about somebody telling me, they're like, man, you're just favored everywhere you go. I'm like, no, I'm not. They're like, yeah, you did. You didn't even wait in line for this. You got a upfront parking spot. And when it was time to go to the restrooms, you got a free restroom. You didn't even have to stand in line with the girls. And I was like, oh yeah, you're right. Like, you don't understand it because you walk in this favor of expectation because your father is going to care for you. Like, and not that the Lord, like, I always tell people, I feel like I'm getting spoiled because the Lord's like, I'm like, Lord, I don't want to stand in the rain. I don't want to walk in this rain. Can you give me a parking spot up front? I don't want to stand in this line to register for this conference. I walk in and some girl just sat down. She's, I can take you. I'm like, of course you can. I don't want to stand in line with 400 women to use the 8 stalls they have in a restroom. Yeah. And then the family room opens up and I'm like, oh, thank God. And so like, I just was like, oh yeah, you're right. We take those things for granted.
Yeah. I think, it may seem like such a small thing, but he's in the small moments. Like, he's in the small details and he knows our heart. Like, he knows our desires, even like not wanting to stand in a line. Like, he knows that. And I think the Lord uses those small moments to show us his kindness.
Yeah. And I think you should have expectation. Expectation of, Lord, like, what miracle is going to follow me today? Who do I get to pray for? Who do I get to bless today? Who are you speaking to today? And we talk about this, like we were trained when you're in ministry school, they train you to like go out and give prophetic words and be aware of what's around you. Sure. I think some ministry schools, they go to the mall, they find people or words of knowledge, somebody wearing a red shirt. Okay, I have a word for them. Those type of things. I think those things activate something really deep within. Yeah. But it's also you operating on behalf of heaven. Yeah. So when you dedicate that time out to be like, who can we bless today? Who do we need to be blessing today? Whose meal do we need to be paying for? Whose groceries do we need to pay for? And it may not even be fully in your budget. Sure. But the capacity to do whatever it is you can. Yeah. And I think in those moments, like the Lord always comes through in small ways you just never expect.
Yeah.
And so it's that expectation of the
Sure.
goodness of God in your
Yeah.
life, and not dwelling on the things that are not happening,
Yeah.
but asking the Lord, Lord, what is your strategy in fixing
Mm-hmm.
this? You know, miracles and signs and wonders should follow you,
Yeah.
and we have to ask ourselves, is it following us?
Sure. I think too, it's like, it's a heart posture. It's a heart posture of like, yeah, you might have your own needs, but it's a heart posture of having thankfulness, like even along the journey, because if you're obedient, and the Lord blesses obedience, He does. And when you're obedient to sow a seed or sow into someone, when you yourself have your own needs, I really truly think like the Lord just blesses that. And He shows you His kindness in ways that is unexpected, just to let you see more of His character. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean? Um, and when we reach out to, and maybe it's giving a word or being obedient and stepping out, and a situation comes to mind. There was a woman at church, and the Lord told me to go just pray for her and give her a specific word. And I'm like, I don't know this girl. Like, I've never met her. And she's like clear across the church, and it's a
Mm-hmm.
big church.
Mm-hmm.
Like, really? Like, I gotta get out of my way.
Can't
Like,
you find anybody else
like,
that
can
was
you, like,
closer?
somebody like right here? No, it was like clear on the other side of the church. And I'm like, really? And so for a few minutes, I just sat there being like, really, Lord, am I just, I just want to confirm. And what's crazy is one of the things that I spoke to her about was like, the Lord sees you in this
Mm-hmm.
season. He sees your heart. And I just want to give you a hug. Like, I feel like the Lord just wants to give you a hug. Like, it was not a big
Mm-hmm.
word. It was just that. And the woman just melted in my arms and told me, I prayed specifically on the way to church this morning that I just wanted to be loved on today. I
Mm.
just need you, Lord. And she said, and then here you are. And I'm like, so for my step of obedience to go out and speak over her was hard, right? Sometimes it's hard in those moments to step out in obedience if it's uncomfortable. But what the Lord does is He used that to bless her in such a way, and then blessed me because I could see the Lord moving and
Mm-hmm.
working. And not only that, but it builds my faith, and it builds my own personal track record with the Lord, right? And trusting Him in those moments. And I think when you build your story, you build your relationship with the Lord, it just continues to grow.
Mm-hmm.
And so I will never forget that moment. I
Mm-hmm.
just There's certain times and seasons where there's moments like that. You're like, wow, Lord, you did that.
Yeah.
It's not about me.
Yeah.
It's all about Him.
Yeah. I'll be honest, I think I've taken those moments for granted because I think there's seasons I get those moments a lot.
Yeah,
And they're regular for me.
sure.
And I don't think about it being, oh wow, God, like this is awesome. I just think, oh, that was cool. And just kind of move on because it becomes the
You're
normal.
normal. Yeah.
And I think I don't. And I remember being when the Ken thing happened,
Yeah.
I remember the Lord saying to me, He's like, Julie, this is always happening around you, and you're acting like it's just a casual thing.
Yeah.
And it's not.
Mhm.
It's not a casual thing. It's the goodness of the Lord, and it's to be praised. It's to be wonder of God.
Yeah.
It's just to fall in love with Him all over
It
again.
feels like a gift. Like
It
those
does.
moments feel like a
It
gift.
does. And so I think sometimes for some of us who I guess experience a lot of that on a
Yeah.
daily basis, it's just different. And I feel like I have to be very intentional
Mhm.
and not overlooking the small things
Yeah.
of what He's doing. And they're not small, actually. They're actually big things.
Mhm.
They're just small in the big scale of life.
Sure.
But like they are big things that are happening, and they change people's lives.
Yeah.
And for us too, it's like we remember that. But for Ken, it was huge.
Yeah.
He felt seen by God.
Yeah.
For the lady at church, it was huge. She was seen
Yeah.
by God.
Yeah.
And that is what we do, why we do what we do.
Yeah. There's one other quick story that I want to mention. This was just super recent. So a friend of ours, and you know her as well, she was excited for our podcast content. And I was just kind of sharing my heart with her and was like, yeah, I'm not really sure how it's going to go. We're kind of changing things up, just trying to be obedient to the Lord. We're changing all of our content. Like we're going to move on to talking about like the heart of the Father for us. And she just thought it was amazing. And we spent some time in prayer that night, and that was a while ago. It was a couple months ago at least. And just this week, she reached out and was like, "Hey, I want to sow a seed." And I'm like, "What is this for?" and she put some cash in an envelope that said all things are possible with God, and I'm just like, yes, they are.
Mhm.
So even like that gesture of her stepping out in obedience, but it meant a lot to me.
Mhm.
It meant a lot to you because all she's just like, I just want to sow a seed into what y'all are doing.
Mhm.
And I'm like, wow, Lord, it's just such encouragement from the Lord, I think, in those moments. And I know the Lord blesses obedience for those that are moving in steps of obedience like that.
Yeah, especially for us who we contemplate like, what are we doing? Like, is this like even worth it? We're not
Yeah.
influencers. We're not.
Like, who are we?
Yeah, we're not any of those people. We're actually just being obedient to what he asked us to do, and like, is we question the fruit of that and
Yeah.
what it takes,
Uh-huh.
and so I think even encouraging words and people, I'm like, sowing a seed into what, us
I
for
know, like,
what?
why? Yeah.
But it did kind of give me hope. There was
Mhm.
hope that was planted that day,
Yeah.
and all the like, is this a priority? Like, do we need to keep doing this
Yeah.
type of thought process,
Yeah.
and with all that's going on? I've been in a
Sure.
busy season. So I think the small things to experience God's miracles is a heart posture of expectation.
Mhm.
And I think you should walk in that fully. Like
Yeah.
I know a friend of mine that would, and they were college students. They were always broke, but
Yeah.
they were just living on pennies. And they would say, they're like, Julia, we literally get up every morning and we leave the house. We're like, all right, Lord, how are you going to bless us today? And who do we get to bless?
Yeah.
And that expectation of going and the things that they would experience
Wow.
are wild.
Yeah.
It's because their heart posture was that way.
There's an
I'm ready to
expectation.
bless.
Yeah.
Like they would take cash with them. And I'm like if you take cash with you and, they knew they can't go out to eat. They're going to be eating ramen noodles. Like they knew that, but they were okay with that.
Uh-huh.
They were okay with it and the abundance of what God was doing. And I just think there needs to be just a different lens and perspective of how we're looking at that.
Yeah.
And blessings are not just only the prayers that you're asking for
Yeah.
and the big things.
Mhm.
Like there are some amazing things happening in the world
Yeah.
with what God is doing with people.
Yeah.
And they don't all have platforms to talk about them.
Yeah.
But he's doing it. And I think he needs to be glorified for those small things.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think sometimes too, it's not even just monetary. Like sometimes it's just a kind word. Sometimes it's just reaching out and being intentional to someone. Another recent scenario, shout out to new friend Grace on TikTok. Like we went back and forth and she was just so sweet and like, was really encouraged by some of the stuff that she saw from the content. I'm like, wow, Lord, like you're really using this to reach some people. And it's not because of who we are, but it was so encouraging because she had shared with me, and us just through TikTok conversation, she said, I just really appreciate how real you all are. And like, it's really encouraging. And so even hearing feedback from people that are listening, and it may seem like something so small, but it's so encouraging because as we are stepping out in obedience to the Lord and doing what he's called us to do and stewarding the podcast, it's like, wow, like people are actually getting blessed. And it's so nice to hear that.
Yeah, and then we don't have to deal with the comments from the trolls that don't know us
From
and
the
just say random
trolls.
things like,
They're out there.
yeah, they're out there. And so and somebody was like, you need to get ready for the netizens. I'm like, who are the netizens? Who gives them authority? Like, I don't
Right.
care about the netizens. Like, I just want to know the Lord moved in your life.
Yeah.
And most people, that's an authenticity issue,
Yeah.
right? Like, people don't like, and we talked about that. Like, I don't really comment all that much either.
Yeah.
Unless you're posting about your kids or some puppies, like the chances of me commenting are probably very few. And maybe I need to be more intentional about that.
Yeah.
Because I do get excited and I do see, but sometimes I don't like things either. I'm just
Yeah.
like, scrolling really fast, trying
Sure.
to update myself in life and be like, okay, that's all the time I have for today.
Yeah.
If we update
Which I
it-
get it,
yeah.
We all
And
have
so
a lot
like,
going
I
on.
think it's difficult that way, but I think I just have to be intentional. I have to be very aware of it.
Mhm.